Hi folks, before I dive into what this video is actually about, I want to just share a brief anecdote from my day. I was in my car and there was a person who was asking for money on the side of the road, so I rolled down my window, gave him a few bucks, and he said, "Thank you, ma'am." Sir, ma'am, I'm sorry. And my response was, "Don't worry, I get it all the time," because I don't think people realize this. It's supposed to be really embarrassing when you get someone's gender mixed up and you can't tell what they are, but for me, that's the goal. For me, I want to be ambiguous because that's the closest I'm going to get in this very binary society to people seeing my real self, my real gender. Since I'm non-binary, it's unlikely anyone will ever see me as that because a lot of people don't even know that's a thing. So the best I can get is them to go, "Ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am," and just not be sure how to pin me because I don't want to be pinned. So yeah, that's an anecdote from today. On to the real purpose of this video, which is to talk about my decision to get on testosterone as a Christian, where I see God in it, because for me it always feels weird to talk about being queer and to talk about the changes I am making to my presentation and my body without bringing God into it, because God is very much a part of what I am doing. I can't imagine undertaking this journey without God's encouragement and support. So that's what this video is about. And I'm going to start with some Bible stuff because anyone who knows me knows that I am a major Bible nerd. I adore Scripture, and all of my life I can see through the lens of Scripture. So let's start with this idea of a body and what it means to have a body and whether we're allowed to change it, because people ask me that all the time. If our body is a temple, if God made this body and God doesn't make mistakes, am I really allowed to change my body that radically? And the answer is yes, and let's get into that. First off, bodies are a gift from God. We see that in the start of Genesis and throughout Scripture, that we are not spirits. We are not these bodiless spirits that are just sort of trapped in a body for a while before we're set free. No, from the very beginning, in Genesis 1 and the second creation story of Genesis 2, we see that God formed us as physical beings and then breathed God's spirit, God's breath, ha-ruach, into us. And that is what gave us life. That is what made us who we are. Not the spirit separate from the body, and not the body separate from the spirit, but the two working together to be one human being, to be one creation. And we also are created in a group. There's not just one person isolated from everyone else. We are created to be in relationship with God and with one another. That is what the purpose of our bodies and our spirits together are. As inspirited bodies, as embodied spirits, we interact with those around us on spiritual, emotional, and physical levels, and this is good. When I was growing up, I adored the stories of saints. I grew up Catholic, so the saints who would self-flagellate and fast to the point of starvation and would do everything they could to get away from their bodies. I saw that as what maybe I was meant to do because I always hated my body. And through their stories and the sort of general mindset of a lot of Christianity, taking after some of the letters of Paul that speak of the flesh as evil, as associated with bad desires and selfishness, having this as my backup, my justification for hating my body, I could say that this self-hatred I experienced was a good thing, even a holy thing. But we go back to Genesis, and we see that the first word God has for us as inspirited bodies is good. God looks at us in the midst of all that God has created, and God calls it all tov me'od, very good. And this word tov, good, is more than just like good, like great. It's got this intense sense of rightness to it, of wholeness. And so as I started realizing that part of why I hated my body so much was that I was transgender, that I was non-binary, and that the way people viewed me as a young woman was really painful to me and made me feel alienated from this body that is me, that is part of myself. I realized that this self-hate was not good. This self-hate was not what God was leading me into, because we follow a God of abundant life. We follow a God who took human form, a God who is bodiless, truly naturally bodiless, and did this most unnatural thing. This divinity came and joined humanity, became the incarnation that we call Jesus Christ. The Word became flesh, and it was good. If flesh were not good, do you think God would have deigned to stoop down and take it and become it? And so I realized I needed to change how I viewed my body, both as it currently was, the parts I disliked, the parts that made me feel alienated. I had to learn to love my body even with those. And I also learned that it was okay for me to want my body to change, to get rid of those things, to get a new sense of self. And not only does this Jesus, who is born into a body that our world rejects, a body that is brown, Palestinian, Jewish, a body that was oppressed under a corrupt Roman Empire, not only does this Jesus help others see the beauty in themselves, he seeks out bodies that are rejected like his, the bodies of women and Samaritans, the bodies of tax collectors and lepers. Not only does he do all this, but when he dies, when his body dies, he rises not only in spirit. He rises not only in spirit, but in body. And not only in body, but a wounded body, a body that bears the marks of the cross, the holes in his hands, the holes in his feet, the hole in his side. He keeps them all. The scars of the soldiers' whips on his back and his forehead he keeps. To remind himself and to remind everyone that what the world calls brokenness is actually wholeness. What the world calls abnormal and wrong and different, God calls blessed. He is blessed with the wounds. We are broken and whole. We are broken and whole. And I see in transition that kind of thing. I have scars from my top surgery, and I am very proud of them. I am glad they are there. I am thankful to God that I've had to take this journey, that I was born into a body that was going to grow breasts, even though I hated them for so many long years of my life. They made me feel so disconnected from my body. I am thankful that I had them, because now not having them is something I can be thankful for every day instead of taking it for granted. I see those scars and I remember what it took to get me there. I remember the love of family and friends who helped me raise the money for the surgery. I remember the kindness of the staff and the surgeon. I remember the love of my partner, Leah, as she took me to the clinic to get the surgery done. The love she had as she cared for me in the week after the surgery. The love of congregants at my church in Louisville and fellow seminarians who made sure that I was doing okay and had food to eat as I recovered. I grew closer in relationship to people because of top surgery, because I had to get it done, because I have scars that link me to everyone else who has scars. That's what I see in Jesus, and that's what I see in transition. I link myself to him, and I link myself to all who bear scars, who are called broken by our world and abnormal and different, but whom God calls blessed. And so as I undertook this journey with God's help, as I prayed for discernment and for wisdom from the Spirit of God to make sure that what I thought was the right way really was what God was calling me to do, I found a lot of comfort and excitement in a quote by someone called Starchild. I'll link the URL below. It's the one work I have found by them, and it's a very meaningful work on what it means to them to be transgender as a child of God. And so this quote I found from them meant a lot to me. And I think it really sums up how I see transitioning in a very physical way. Changing my body. I got top surgery last summer, and now I have started hormone replacement therapy, HRT, getting testosterone injections that I give myself, which is really scary. Every 2 weeks, I inject some of this into my body. And anyway, this is the quotation from Starchild. Starchild says that trans people are engaged in a sacred and holy task when they undertake such a difficult passage, meaning transition. Rather than attempt to see this passage as something shameful and guilty, we must see it as children of God, taking seriously God's creation of them as creatures who are made in the image of God and therefore co-creators with God. And see it as children of God, taking seriously God's calling to ruthlessly remove any hindrances to their being whom God desires them to be, so that they may serve God to their fullest. I love that term, co-creators with God. Is that not what we are? Is that not what God invites us to be? Something God didn't have to invite us to be, but that God wanted us to be. She wanted us to build and create with them. She wanted us to grow. That's why we are born as tiny little infants, and then we grow and we grow. We learn how to talk and walk. For some of us, we learn how to eat. We learn how to share ourselves with one another. We are always growing. We hit puberty, and then we get older, and we grow old, and we age, and eventually we die. We are always growing and changing, and we can be a part of that process. It doesn't have to be a passive thing that just happens to us. It can be something that we join God in doing, and we have some say in how our body unrolls, how it changes and grows. And I also like that second part of the quote about transitioning being part of us removing hindrances to being whom God called us to be so that we can serve God. This is so true to me. When I was trying to live as a woman, I felt isolated and anxious from other human beings. I felt angry with God who had made me in a way that didn't work for me, that made people see me as something I didn't feel like I was. These fruits were bad fruits when I was trying to be what I was not. It made me cut myself off from other human beings. It made me suicidal. And then when I finally realized God was inviting me to change and grow, to be a co-creator with them, the fruit was so good. Suddenly I was able to help other human beings who were going through the same things I have been going through. And I was able to embrace human beings who embraced me as I was, and to celebrate with them, and even to love those who don't see me for what I am, even to love those who reject what I am, to learn the patience and the true love of enemy that Jesus teaches has been a gift, and one I'm still working on. Not always an easy gift, but a gift nonetheless. And I have it because I am genderqueer. I have it because I am non-binary, because I don't fit into the gender the doctor assigned me when I was born. It has been such a gift, such a blessing, never a curse. So yeah, the last thing I wanted to do in this video is kind of weird. I want to perform a poem that I wrote about the new step in my transition. I also want to clarify this word transition. It doesn't mean I'm going from being a woman to being non-binary. I was never a woman. I've always been non-binary. This transition is more being non-binary knowing I am and helping others move towards seeing that in me. Transition is a social thing. It's about connecting with people. It's about inviting them along in this journey that I am taking with myself and with God. And maybe in hearing this poem, you'll join me in this journey. And maybe you'll see how you are called to transition regardless of your gender, whether you are cisgender, perfectly content with the gender you were assigned, or whether you're not sure what you are, who you are, if you are firmly transgender, binary, or non-binary. No matter who or what you are called to always transition, to change, to move, to grow. We are not meant to be stagnant beings. We are meant to grow in relationship and wisdom, and love of our neighbor, and love of God. And so that's what this poem is about. It's about me as I'm waiting. I've been on testosterone for, how long? I think 5 weeks now. I've done 3 injections now. Just the tiniest bit of testosterone. It's such a small bottle. It's only 5 milliliters every 2 weeks. And I inject it into my body. And I do before I'm going to go on a tangent before I go into the poem. My friend from church, who has been on testosterone for a few years, was so kind. When I told him I was nervous about doing the whole injection thing, he invited me to his home. And he showed me how to do it, and he did the first injection for me because I was too afraid to do it myself. And to me, that is a prime example of how being transgender, how transitioning, whatever that looks like for you, is a true gift, and it invites us to be in relationship with other people. It gives us these unique perspectives and these unique opportunities to serve one another and to thank God. And so, anyway, without further ado, into this poem about me waiting for changes that haven't come yet, but that I know are coming, and how God is part of that. Like the fire-raised forest holding its breath for the first scraggly shoots that will poke cautious heads through the ashes. So every morning I run hopeful fingers over the backs of my calves, the patches of thigh that have always been smooth, bare, to see if the night has gifted me with any new hair. For once acne is a source of excitement, how unthinkable is that? Could it be the first hint of the hormone working in me? My voice remains a flat expanse of ice, but I wait hopeful, knowing it must crack soon, soon. I close my eyes and imagine how the hormone, pushed slowly in by my own hand, emboldened by that dream of what will be. With a lightning flash of pain, a flurry of dizziness, the hormone nestles into my muscle, wends its way through my bloodstream, teaches my cells a brand new way to organize themselves. And I scarcely believe it can do what I know it will do. Is it not miraculous? How such a teensy bit of liquid injected once every 14 days can blossom my body into something new. And living God, I feel you in all of this. You are here. You are here, you are here. Your spirit spins around me with delight as more and more my body harmonizes with the vision that we share. You whisk me up in visions of the joy you have in store as I grow into a patience that I never knew before. All transition requires a peculiar faith. It is the faith of the monarch migrating south, who trusts that wherever she is going, there will be flowers.